Shatterstar and Rictor's on-off-again broy romance is probably one of the most beloved relationships of contemporary X comics today. They started off as just good buddies in the 90s X-Force series, but there was always like a subtle undercurrent of something more to their friendship being hinted at in the subtext of their dialogues and body language. Nothing ever actually manifested itself in the pages back then, though, until many years later in X Factor Investigations number 45, where they finally shared their first on-panel kiss. From there, their relationship both blossomed and deteriorated, as all great comic book romances do, but eventually they rediscovered each other yet again at last year's Hellfire Gala, and now they are apparently giving it another go together. But before Rictor was ever even on Shatterstar's radar, there was someone else who was already in old Shattybuns' life, namely his wife, Windsong. In X-Force number 30, Shatterstar and Adam the Extreme are both kidnapped by Arcade, and they are forced to fight each other to the death. Both these two guys are warriors born, so they thrill at the onset of battle, but it isn't until Arcade reveals what he thinks will be his secret trump card in this whole thing that they finally decide to actually team up with each other and go against their captor. Turns out that Arcade has also kidnapped Windsong from the Mojoverse, and he is holding her captive as an insurance policy to make sure that Shatterstar and Adam give him the show that his clients want. And if they don't, then Arcade threatens that Windsong has sung her last, wind. Shatterstar's motivation thus changes from fighting to rescuing, and he and Adam X manage to find Arcade's control room where he demands that Windsong be released immediately or else. Windsong instantly professes her love to Shatterstar, and she begs him to kill Adam X so that they both might be set free, but Shatterstar flips the script here and he decides to do the only honorable thing, and that is not to kill Adam X, but to kill himself. That's when Arcade reveals that he never had Windsong to begin with, as this was just a holographic image of her, and the whole thing was just a setup by Major Domo to try to get rid of Shatterstar. Too bad for Arcade though, Shatterstar gets real better real quick after his self-stabbing, and after he hears Arcade's confession, he seeks to kill Arcade, but of course that was just an Arcade robot instead of being the real deal. Later, after Shatterstar and Adam X escape the Murder World compound and are reminiscing over what just happened, Shatterstar confesses that he knew Arcade didn't have Windsong at all because she and he have never actually met each other, and he knew that Arcade played his hand too strongly after she started proclaiming her adoration for him. As it turns out, marriage in the Mojoverse doesn't exactly mean the same traditional thing that it means here for us. Even though we've seen a few Mojoverse romances over the years, like Longshot and Dazzler, and to a degree, Longshot and Spiral, Shatterstar gives us some insight into a very different manner of Mojoverse relationship that he and Windsong are both privy to. When Arcade tries to trick Shatterstar with the first Windsong hologram, Shatterstar tells Adam that even though she is his wife, their entire relationship is just based around predetermined genetic bond mating, which I think is just Mojoverse slang for a very arranged marriage. His and Windsong's genetic material would be used to perpetuate the Mojo World Arena's warrior stock, meaning that when it comes time to copulate, these two lovebirds probably wouldn't even need to be in the same room as one another, and the Mojo scientists would just take care of all that sexy time using vials and DNA sequencing behind the scenes. And if that's as exciting as a Mojo World marriage gets, I can only imagine what thrills are on the honeymoon. Anyway, even though they never formally met each other, Shatterstar recognizes Windsong, and since she is also a warrior-born freedom fighter just like he is, the whole damsel in distress routine just wasn't adding up to what little he did know about Windsong, so he was able to easily see through Arcade's ruse. This is pretty much the first and last time we ever see Windsong, though she is mentioned a few more times over the years. At the very end of this issue of X-Force number 30, Shatterstar is picked up by his best friend Rictor, and the story ends with him deciding to fess up about his wife to him. Again, the subtext here makes it feel like he's sharing a dirty little secret with his lover, which, I mean, I guess was kind of the case with what we know about their relationship now, but I kind of love how on the DL this feels. It's super 90s and like risque. A few issues later, in X-Force number 34, Rictor and Shatterstar kind of look like they're having a lover's spat, and Rictor throws it in Gavidra 7's face about how little he has shared with him about his family and his past, including about Windsong. I particularly love how Rictor puts wife in quotations here, which I can only imagine is him making those physical air quotes with his fingers, and that is a level of lover's spat pettiness that I absolutely aspire to. The next time Windsong is mentioned is in X-Force number 61, when Cable and Shatterstar are fighting off a horde of Mojo's forces. Cable is lamenting on how similar he and Shatterstar actually really are to one another, like how they were both thrown into war as infants, and how they both come from a future, and how they both lost their wives. This is kind of an ambiguous statement because even though we know that Cable's wife Jess Scott has actually died, this is the first time it's indicated that Windsong might have met a similar fate. We never saw anything like that happen though, and Shatterstar has never mentioned it, but I mean, who knows what happens off-panel in the personal lives of mutants. I personally don't think that Windsong's death is what Cable is alluding to here. I think the parallel he's trying to make between them is simply that their wives are no longer in the picture for whatever reason, be them dead or alive, but still, the way the sentence is structured leaves it a bit open for interpretation. And then finally, after about 2.5 decades since her first creation, Windsong finally makes her very first in-person, on-panel, non-robot, non-hologram debut when she shows up in Shatterstar's 2019 miniseries. We are treated to some flashback glimpses of Shetty's past in these books, back when he was a warrior in Mojo's arenas, and in issue number 3, we see that there's Windsong too, warming up for her own bout of fights. Apparently, she has been nicknamed the Savage Siren in the arena, and Shatterstar can be seen telling his mentor/lover, Gringrave, that Mojo has formally announced that he and Windsong are to be wed. Gringrave feels a bit jealous of that, so she plots to kill Windsong, but wants to make it look like an accident, but Shatterstar rejects her plan, basically by saying, "What's love got to do with it?" Gringrave then shows him a video feed of Windsong talking to another arena fighter named Sovereign Shard. Oh my god, what are with these names? Where it looks like the two of them are planning to kill Shatterstar so that he and Windsong won't be wed. In the next issue, Shatterstar attacks and kills Sovereign Shard before he could stage any kind of ambush on him, but then it's revealed that Grimgrave had actually tampered with the video recording, and Sovereign Shard and Windsong had no actual intention of killing Shatterstar at all, but instead sought to free him from the arenas. That's where the flashback ends, and I thought it was of particular interest here that Shatterstar and Windsong never interacted once during it. That maintains the canon that was introduced way back in X-Force number 30 when Shatterstar was telling Adam X that he never actually met Windsong. That just tells me that this writer did their research really well before crafting the script, and I way more appreciate that they took the canon and fitted their script around that, instead of just like penning something and ignoring the history and possibly retconning things that didn't really need to be retconned. What else is interesting about Shatterstar's dynamic with Windsong is his indifference to having any sort of emotional component to their relationship, as that is actually a through line we see about his relationships everywhere. The initial run of X-Force kind of probed deeper into how emotionally stunted he is, like in X-Force number 43, when he and Rictor go out to a nightclub and some hoe named Stecky tries to grind up on him. Rictor is doing fine playing wingman and tells him to go for it, but Shatty basically freaks out because he doesn't know how to respond and he splits from the club. I mean, again, the subtext is here that maybe he felt uncomfortable because it was a lady and not Rictor who was dancing with him, but they don't really explore that angle, and instead Shatterstar admits that he just really doesn't know how to emotionally behave in any sort of tender or loving or romantic, or in the case of Stecky, hoey way. Rictor tells him that he'll help him learn everything he needs to know about this kind of stuff, but then literally in the next issue, Rictor quits the team. Shatterstar is super distressed about it, which is, again, lover subtext. But also, Rick did kind of just tell him that he was going to help him learn social cues, which Shatterstar is desperately in need of, and I think he was relying on those tutorials, so now that Rick is leaving, it does kind of put Shatterstar in the lurch, which I guess is another reasonable explanation as to why he is reacting so explosively. Even later, whenever Rictor and Shatterstar do become an official thing during X-Factor investigations, it's Shatterstar's lack of emotional maturity that drives the wedge between them. Rictor is looking to have something a little bit more committed with Gavidra 7, but Shatterstar is all about exploring his emotions and his physical sensations now with like anything that moves. So even though it seems like he may have mastered the ability to feel and to respond emotionally during romantic situations, it looks like he's taken it to the extreme and instead now needs to learn how to rein it in. All this is to say that Shatterstar's emotional apathy and the emotional ODing is really the center point of any of the downfalls that have been happening in his romantic relationships. And if he ever wants to have a successful one, then he's really got to learn how to regulate himself and tap into the vast spectrum of feelings instead of always going to one extreme or the other. These days, it seems like he has become way better adjusted emotionally, and maybe part of it is because there was like a short time when he thought Rictor died, and so he got to like experience some grief through that, which might have helped him to align things. Shatterstar and Rictor have been so on-off that it's only a matter of time until they strike it right, and just based on what's been happening in Excalibur these days, and in the promos for the Knights of X series, it feels like the two of them are finally on the right track together. Sorry, Windsong, but your genetic mate has found someone else, though I guess it is safe to say that Shatterstar might have a thing for brunettes. So that's what's up with Shatterstar and his wife. Clearly, she is not a major player in his life, especially not since she's from a future that isn't even here yet, so unless they want to bring her to the present day, there's really no chance of him ever running into her again. Or running into her for the first time, I guess I should say, since they've never met. I certainly thought it was interesting to learn about Shatterstar's kind of abandoned wife, if you will, and I hope that you found it interesting too. Let me know if you have any opinions about this particular storyline, as even though it's not something that has like a huge impact on his character, it's still a cute little quirk of his. If you liked this video, then please visit my channel where I upload all sorts of X-Men content like this one. I do reviews and rankings and various topics of whatever piques my interest, so it's always a grab bag of random X stuff. You can also check out my website, greatxmentations.com, or follow me on social media where I post daily X-Men panels from the vault with cute or funny or thought-provoking captions. I want to thank you for being here today and spending this time with me, and please feel free to come back again soon for more great X-Mentations.